So in this video, I want to talk about a concept that I definitely didn't come up with. I might have joined the term with the concept, but the idea is breakout. So what is breakout? It's essentially breaking out of the opening position in Fire Emblem Engage. So why does that matter? What is that? So in a lot of maps in Fire Emblem Engage, or in a lot of specific Fire Emblem games, usually on the hardest setting, you tend to be surrounded. In this case, I have a little bit of room to move around on this map, but in other maps, you're completely surrounded and you have to immediately start pushing a flank, and eventually you're in a kind of middle game. If you've ever played chess, the middle game of chess is usually the most complicated part of chess, where there's a lot of tension on the board and things are unclear, and there's a lot of threats, whether known or unknown, to the player. So in the case of Fire Emblem, breaking out or breakout is a phase of the battle, especially on Maddening Mode, where you're overwhelmed with enemy density, and you're essentially trying to break out of the fighting, like to kill as many enemies as humanly possible, and to continue pushing the map. So most Fire Emblem Engage maddening maps, unless you're using some kind of exploit or some kind of gimmick, rely on you to analyze the position, use your resources correctly, slow push the enemy forces, repositioning as needed based around their reinforcements, which is usually a lot of reinforcements, and breaking out of the initial position is one of the most important steps to winning. You have to break out, gain ground, gain your footing, slow push, and then find some kind of winning condition. So it's all about momentum in this game. So one thing I could do right out of the gate here is try to either pull these or aggro them. So I can see that they all have axes. Now, these all have silver axes. So one way that I could break out of the opening position would be to set up a Lucina wall. So we're going to use Lucina. We'll just kind of dive in here. Maybe here. So I can see how many things can hit me on certain squares. So let's go here. So we'll engage. We'll use Bonded Shield. Then I can stick this unit right here. Now I can check their res to make sure that we kill them. So 15 res, 22 speed, so I will double them. So I'll just wait. So here's like an example of setting up something to break out with. So it's essentially some kind of tactics or some kind of strategy, and it doesn't always have to be. In this case, I'm just kind of killing these quickly just to establish a position to make space. But part of breaking out is making space. And this is something that I've felt like in a lot of maps of Maddening, where you're just overrun, there's a ton of things, and you have to do something to quickly establish a position, or else you're going to get overrun by enemy density. And there are multiple ways to do this. This is like the most simplistic example, where I'm just using a unit to farm enemies and make space. Now this paralog, I'm like maybe 10 levels higher than it. This unit's particularly high leveled, so she's able to make quick work of them. But it's a very important concept, because when you break down a lot of these maps, you start off in either a position where you have a little bit of space or a position where you have no space. In most positions, you have no space. So you have to push through enemies, create some space. So now I've killed these enemies, now I can kind of occupy the space over here. If I toggle these mages, you can see that if I were to kill this enemy, I could probably make like a defensive wall here, and we've essentially broken out into the east. And the south has people pushing. Now if I were to dive these, I'd have to contend with these enemies. I could probably double and find a kill on something weak. So you always have to manage what can get hit. So in this case, I could kill this with a mage. I could probably dance someone in there, so I could do something like this.
The choice is yours.
So the general phases of three houses of an engage map kind of go like this. You start off in a bad position, and there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of tension. You're getting overrun, there's enemies everywhere. You have to get key picks on the enemy team, or blockade or delay certain enemies using whatever tools are available. And then from there, it just keeps going. So you're in this like tension phase forever, like seemingly forever. Let's see, can we kill him? We cannot kill him. All right, so I can kill this one. I might as well kill him from over here. Or even like this. I can like snipe him with a javelin. But you're in this like tension phase for a very long time until eventually you hit like a tipping point. Now, all of this depends on your team comp and what kind of things you're running. But I found that thinking about the map in terms of this concept kind of helps. Now, this map doesn't seem too bad, honestly. This is like a paralog. This is the first time I'm doing it. I just wanted to demo and talk about like this concept.
Where to?
Because it's really easy to get overrun with enemy density, and you need all the tools and tricks you can get to kill them. Now, some of these things are broken, and I would be surprised if they remain in the game. Like some of these, like avoid tank builds, if they don't patch them out or address them, I'd be very surprised. But that being said, there are some broken avoid tank builds. So if you just want to easily beat the game on Maddening, that's one way to do it for sure. But I'd rather do it legitimately, like actually playing the game, just using the mechanics as intended. Now, arguably, you are using the mechanics as intended when you do avoid tank stacking, but I don't know that they intended on people breaking the game with evasion. I mean, maybe they did, but I'm skeptical. So if you're actually playing the game normally, like under normal circumstances on Maddening, it's useful to think about your position in terms of being overwhelmed, how to address it being overwhelmed, how to break through the enemies, efficiently kill them, make progress, and maneuver. And breakout phase is like most of the map, I feel like. Like, it's usually, it's not even emotional. Like, usually at a moment, you kind of know when you've broken out. When it's like, there's finally like this moment where you're like, okay, their numbers are down, we have a winnable position, we have an advantage, we can push to win, and we're no longer stuck in spawn. That's like, and this being like your spawning point. So that's like the key thing, because on some of these maps, they push you back into the wall and kind of force you to play hyper aggressive to make progress. And if you don't play hyper aggressive, you just won't beat the map, or if you do, it'll just take forever. And that's especially true on chapter 24, where you have turn limit. So I don't think that spoils anything, just mentioning that it has a turn limit, because like that's so generic. Like that could mean anything. But that being said, I would say the overall like beat by beat of a battle is something like this. You start off, you have like your opening. So like you have your opening, your middle game, and your end game, like with most things, except in this game, your opening is like maybe a turn, and that's it. It immediately dives into the end game in most maps. Or I'm sorry, the middle game. And then your middle game is the longest. In chess, it can be kind of short, because like either player can decide to start trading down material. But in this game,
Of course.
they keep the middle game going forever. So that's like your breakout phase. So like you have your opening move, then you have your breakout phase where you're just trying to establish a position, establish dominance on the map, make things happen, get your units into a position where winning is possible, killing the boss is possible. And then after that you have your end game where, you know, most things are killed. Most maps don't end like an end game in chess. Like if you've ever played chess, end games in chess tend to be kind of obvious who won. In some cases it's not. Like you can have some really weird obscure pawn ending where your opponent has like a rook or a queen, but you have like forced checks into a promotion checkmate or something weird. But end games in chess, like there's very few pieces on the board. There's very few material. End games in this game are honestly like, some maps stop spawning enemies, so early on like you can feel when you're in an end game, but like later on there's infinite spawns and all this crazy stuff, and just all these recurring spawns and ambush spawns, and well, more like reinforcements. They don't really do ambush spawns in this game, but there's quite a bit, so it feels like the entire level is just middle game. So, and I actually do like the middle game in chess. it's probably the most complex part. Endgames can have some complexity, and obviously the higher in rating you go in chess, the more complex the game gets in general. But my favorite part of chess is the middle game. So essentially I get to play the middle game as an anime chess simulator. So it's actually pretty sick. But that random tangent being aside, or like aside from that random tangent, we have this like breakout phase, which is like most of the map. Now we'll see how this map progresses. Whenever you see like low enemy count like this looks like a lot, but like all this empty space, expect reinforcements in this game, and expect for there to be, you know, like some twist, you know, some new mechanic being introduced, something. They're always introducing something new. So just be aware of that. All right, can we offer one this? I highly doubt that. No, you don't have the damage there. But that's pretty much it for this one. I just want to talk about how maddening kind of feels to play. Now, if we get to a point where we know how to optimize every single unit and there's just like crazy broken unit builds, that might be the case. We won't have to, like, the breakout phase will be kind of shorter because then you can establish a position. The main thing that I found is that some of my units just aren't good, even though they're like up to level. This unit's fine if she's under leveled. And it's hard to say like what the best tools are at this point in time in the game. We still haven't really figured out the metagame. There's a lot of like builds that are kind of popping up, people are talking about, but I don't think there's like an established metagame yet. Like, oh, use this thing, it's the best thing. Like we'll get to that stage soon, and then people will challenge it, and we might come up with new builds. All right, let's see if we tank this. But even though I killed so many enemies, I still wasn't able. Oh, he hit my dancer. I still wasn't able to like move in very far. Yeah, there's the reinforcements. So this is like breakout. You're just like trying to get out of the starting position, trying to take space, trying to kill enemies, and really trying to avoid getting picked, because you never know. This enemy, he's not super high level. Like on the current chapter, I'm on chapter 24. If I leave one of my squishies open, they're dead, 100%. Even most of my main units, if they get hit by the wrong enemy, they'll get like one rounded. So there's definitely this like struggle phase you have to go through to like kill enemies, and you definitely feel it in Maddening, especially on a blind run if you decide to do that. So that's it for this one. Definitely like and subscribe if you enjoyed this or found this useful. I'm going to try to do videos on basic tactics as well, and I'm going to be doing unit guides soon. I need to beat the game a few times before I can do unit guides. Some people have been doing tier lists. That's fine. You can do tier lists based on what you've observed, but I think it's too early to like definitively say this unit's B tier, S tier, A tier, and so on. Some units are obvious S tiers, and then other units seem like they're bad, but there's probably weird ways to make them good. So I'm not going to write any unit off just yet. I mean, in some of my playthroughs I have to some degree, but it's more just like frustration like with the unit. But yeah, that's it for this one. Definitely like and subscribe, and feel free to comment, let's break out.